Happy Thursday. We have a rather momentous game in Buffalo tonight as Jack Eichel makes his return. There's some other games that are interesting. There were some games, a couple games last night that were, well, at least the one was, let's just say it reinforced my opinion of a particular team. But we'll go about that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll start off with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
All right, so let's give an update on Major League Baseball. Okay, that was the update. Except, guys who are involved in the league want to give an update every 10 seconds, and fans are tired of it already. They're like, stop with the updates, because nobody wants to hear you're $50 million closer or $40 million closer when the season has already been missed. Now, they're done through the 14th, but why are they stopping short at the 14th, Mike?
Jackie Robinson Day.
And neither team wants to take responsibility for canceling that.
Yeah, but they will. But they will.
Yeah, but they just don't want to take the PR hit initially. So they're going to figure out how to do that, whether they say they're going to reschedule it or, whatever kind of nonsense they're going to do. But like someone like Evan Longoria, he tweeted, when are we going to start? And I'm thinking, go start somewhere else. Go play. Nobody's stopping you from playing around the world.
No, but he can't play for $15 million anywhere else.
Well, that's his problem.
Right, exactly. And see, this is the thing that's insidious about this negotiation. And for the second time in 2 weeks, we heard on Monday night there's progress. Things are close, and then they take off, they break for the night, and then they come back, and their positions have hardened, and they sort of retreat back. So were they really ever really close, or was that all bullshit? And I think it's bullshit. And you know what?
It was baloney.
Fans are basically saying, you know what, like you said, call me when the deal is made. And the thing is, I don't know whether there's enough impetus right now to say that a deal is going to be made, because I think we've clearly pointed out the fact that they don't want to play in April because they don't make a ton of money in April, and the players are like, okay, I'm not going to get my full 160 salary for 162, so they're already being penalized for a deal that they're probably not going to get much in terms of progress back against the owners. So I don't understand why this is going on.
I don't either. There's bones flying here. They keep sharing bones. I don't know why either. But at the end of the day, like you see Max Scherzer saying, well, MLB is not negotiating in good faith. And it's like, and even if they're not, at this point, the game plan has failed for the Players Association. It's failed. Like your job is to keep the players playing, to get them paid the best they can get paid, and to make the most money. And they can't make the most money this year because there's games that are never coming back. And so that's where they failed. Now, you and I can say, hey, the owners never wanted to play in April either. That's true, except if there were terms that they would agree with, they would have played in April. And that's where the players had to figure out, and I don't think they did this, what is the deal we're hoping to get? What is the deal we think they will accept?
Yeah, and the thing that you mentioned on Twitter or commented on, and I commented further, and then I heard people refer to it the way I referred to it when part of the major league offer to the players included an additional level of luxury tax.
Yeah.
And apparently it's punitive in the sense that I think going over that, it's dollar for dollar.
Right. An extra wrist slap.
Right. And that was referred to by myself as a Steve Cohen tax. And I think that major league owners, Michael Kay said this yesterday, major league owners were freaked out by how, liberal Steve Cohen was in terms of how he spent money on Scherzer and a couple others. And they want some mechanism to stop it. The problem is if you have a hard cap, you have to have a floor. And they don't want to have a hard cap.
But they should, because that's what they're heading towards. They
Well,
don't want to admit it, but they're
yeah.
heading towards that. Because if you are basically doing this tax so that the bottom feeding teams could get extra money and just pocket it and never want to spend, then you need a cap, and there has to be a minimum that these teams have to spend. That's what you need to be able to be in this league.
But the players don't want a cap.
Yeah, they're stupid.
Yeah,
I mean, because I'll tell you why. Even though it will stop shirts from making $44 million, it will also stop the Tampa Bay Rays from paying guys way under market value or just trading them when they don't want to pay them. That's the thing. There's going to be a moment where teams like the Rays and the Pirates, there should be a memorandum that goes out that basically says, this is what you need to spend on payroll. If you don't want to spend this on payroll, sell your team.
I mean, I agree, but that
like a high stakes poker game. You can't play in this game because you're not willing to put in the minimum investment, and that's it.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. And these low market teams are going to continue to wait for pocket aces, to use your analogy, and then even then they won't have the money to really take advantage of it. So, one last thing before we start the show, talking about football. I didn't see the reaction of Anthony, who is a lifetime Philadelphia Eagles fan, but the fact that Carson Wentz was traded from Indianapolis to Washington, and there was a package of mid round picks, third round pick, a couple third round picks, and something, just shows you the status of quarterbacking in the NFL. He is not a good quarterback. He's
not terrible either.
He's not terrible, but he's not a good one. I mean, is he better than Taylor Heineke? Sure.
Of course.
But, Russell Wilson, I think, is not completely broken down, but I think he's on that side of his career. Maybe Denver can have success with him as in a diminished state, but you could see the warts on him in his last few years with Seattle.
I mean, that team was really bad too. We'll see what he looks like with a little bit of a team that has a better line, and because that line in Seattle stunk. We'll see. Now, as far as Wentz goes, there's a lot of good things about Washington. If they reel in Carson Wentz and give him a ridiculously simple game plan, and they decide they're going to run the ball a certain amount and not get risky with passing, then there's maybe a place for him in this league. They can't give him carte blanche like Indianapolis did. No way.
Yeah. All right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, March the 10th, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. And we start with breaking news. And since we're starting earlier than usual, it's the breaking news is earlier than usual, thanks to apparently to the Philadelphia Flyers and Rasmus Ristolainen, who, according to both Darren Dreger, Elliot Friedman broke it, but Darren Dreger is also apparently chiming in here that there's a deal between the two sides, a 5-year deal at $5 million AAV, which is actually a pay cut for Ristolainen. And
I thought he would want 6x6. 5x5 is actually in this world, it's palatable. They don't really have a choice. Like, if anybody wants to say, like Kevin in here, it's good to double down on a mistake. Like, look, he had a pretty good season. He was not a mistake for them. No. Now, anytime you sign someone for 5 years, you're always risking a certain amount. But the way their defense is currently, they had to sign him. Like, they don't really have a choice, because now what this does is it lets them bring up Cam York whenever, and he could be a third pairing guy. That's good. You hope Ryan Ellis can stay healthy. That's a whole other issue. But this gives them at least a little bit of, solidification of their top four. And you need that in this league just to have a mediocre team. you see when they didn't have it this year, you can't even be a mediocre team because I wouldn't even categorize them as mediocre. So, I think it's going to work against them cap wise. They probably still are going to have to, get rid of JVR somehow. But again, their hope is in 2 or 3 years, they're not going to say this. They're going to say by next year, but in 2 or 3 years that they might be able to compete again. And that's when this deal might come in handy for them.
Well, here's my point of view. Ristolainen he's 27, so he's in the middle of his prime.
Right.
I think, this year he refuted some of the criticism that he had for a long time in Buffalo in terms of him being a good defensive defenseman, which I think he's been. He's been physical. Came at a little bit of the cost of his offensive numbers. This year he's only got 13 points in 49 games. So if this is true and he is signed for $5 million for 5 years, somebody in the chat's like, does this mean he's making valuable in a trade? I would assume if they're signing him for 5 years, there's probably a no move clause.
They're not doing this to make it valuable in a trade.
Yeah, he's maintaining control here, and the control means that there's some restriction, either no trade, modified no trade, or no move, and that comes on immediately. After the Jeff Carter, Mike Richards stuff that happened, the NHL changed the rules, and now that protection comes immediately. But what I look at it here is, and you look at at the beginning of next year, now you have Provorov making, I think it was 6'4",
right?
6'7", excuse me. Mm-hmm. Ryan Ellis making 6'3", 6'2", now Ristolainen making 5.
Yeah, and Sanheim's just
and Sanheim is gone. They're going to trade Sanheim.
Not right away.
Well, okay. Well, do you really want to spend that much on your defense?
I think they do.
For a team that legitimately, as you were just saying before, is not going to be competitive in that.
But they're not. But they don't believe that.
I know, but they have to come to that realization.
They're not going to come to that realization.
Friggin' stupid,
Mike. They're not going to come to that realization.
Money, throw it away.
Right, and that's part of this. They're going to say they're going to be competitive, so they're not going to come out and say this is a 2 or 3 year plan. They won't do it. I'd be shocked if they did it.
Now, Sanheim, he's got another year, and then he's a UFA. So you probably could get, not pennies on the dollar, but you probably could get more trading him this summer at a reasonable cap hit than you would at the deadline, depending on what the defensive market is. Because they will be selling him because they won't be competitive unless he re-signs for less.
Again, you don't know. I'm not going to make a statement like that just yet. But what I will say is this. So Ristolainen now signing probably takes them out of trying to go for that other veteran defenseman that might be out there. Because when they said they were calling up Cam York yesterday, I said, hey, I'm just going to say this because you just never know with this team. Could they be showcasing him simply because if they were trying to go for something bigger like Chikrin or whatever? Now that he's signing, I think that would take them out of it. So that's a positive in the sense that they're not going to give up a boatload of assets to get Chikrin on a couple years. And
it makes no sense now.
Right. So now that would make sense. So you do have that going. Again, this is just a way for, like Kevin is like, this is a Band-Aid. It's a partial Band-Aid, and it's partially building towards the future, too, because there's always going to be a market for a defenseman like Ristolainen. The same way there's always a market for a Radko Gudas. Like, I think Ristolainen's actually a little better than Gudas in the sense that, you could get a little bit of scoring out of him, and he doesn't take as many dumb penalties as Radko Gudas. So that's just to give you an example.
And he's quicker. He's a better.
Yeah, he is quicker.
But see, this is the thing. In my eyes, Ristolainen took less to stay because I think on the open market he gets more than $5 million. Unless
I don't think he did. I'm going to tell you. I think in his new role, based on team's cap space situation, I think his agent probably looked around, and because he's no longer an offensive defenseman and he's more of a defensive defenseman who could get some points, and he's physical, that market's not as robust as being like, you know, an offensive defenseman might. Like that's just the reality.
Yeah, but I
I think
mean,
this is what the market is.
but okay, he's big, he's right-handed, he's mobile. I think those reasons. Now, granted, if he likes it in Philadelphia,
Well, there's no
and
doubt he likes it. I mean,
right,
he's not been under any siege by the fans. The fans like him. It's been a
right.
different situation.
I mean, I'm sure there would be a market out there, but the market may be the teams that have cap space that he doesn't want to go to, like Arizona, like Ottawa, like there's a few other teams out there. If he thought, okay, I like the situation and I can get paid close to what I'd get on the open market, then it makes sense for him. But I think he undercut himself in the sense that I think he would have gotten more as a free agent out there. But I mean, if he's comfortable, that's all that matters for him.
I mean, just to give you an example, like, so he's got 13 points this year, and someone like Adam Pelech has 17. Now, Pelech is a way better defender, right? So he can make that extra money that a defensive defenseman can make. Ristolainen can't because he's not as solid a defender as an Adam Pelech. You know what I mean? That's where they're able to get him a little cheaper.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I think Pelech was what, 5.25, something like that.
Yeah. But again, if he was this year, if he was on the market, he would get 6. He would definitely get 6. But again,
5.75.
Okay, us thinking, you know, a year ago or whatever we said the number, maybe at the beginning of the year, 6 by 6 or whatever. I bet you the Flyers found out and their agent found out that number is not out there with any team for him.
And Vince in the chat says the entire NHL community is laughing at this deal. No, the entire NHL analytics community, which can shove it up their ass.
Right.
Because
here's the difference. Right. Here's the difference, Vince. I've watched him all year. I'm going to tell you his biggest contribution to this team, and it's definite. And whether it shows up on the analytics or not, he has made Travis Sanheim better this year. Sanheim has been more confident. He has been jumping into the play more often with better results because he's not turning the puck over now. Well, why is that? Because he's been playing with Ristolainen and he trusts them and they get along as a parent. That's a big reason why they've made this trade.
His analytics numbers were affected by the fact that he played. He was playing 26, 27 minutes a night with the worst organization in the NHL at that point, the Buffalo Sabres. You know, he was playing. He shouldn't be a point man on the power play. He was playing point on the power play. He was playing matchup first pair minutes. He was playing all the 5-on-5 penalty kill power play. Why? Because they had nobody else.
Right.
That's
so here's a change, right? So in 55 games last year, Sanheim had 15 points and was a -22. In 54 games this year, he's got 1 more goal, 4 goals, 20 points, 5 more points, and he's a +2.
Yeah.
A great amount of that to Ristolainen, giving him the confidence for him to play his game, and he's going to have his high point total this year, and maybe not his career high, it's 35. It'll be close. But that's what they're looking at.
We'll ask Ack in a few minutes when he joins in. But now, if in the wake of this, we have to interpret of how this will affect the deadline, because this is one defenseman off the board. But we have to say though, there are a lot of defensemen on the board, and the talk was that, you know, it was a buyer's market in the sense that, you know, there's a reason why Ben Sherratt hasn't been traded for a first-round pick and something, because that's asking too much for Ben Sherratt, and there are too many other options out there. So, you know, I mean,
they still might get it. Don't get me wrong.
They still might get it, but it might be competition in terms of numerous teams being interested, not the actual value of the player. And I'm not casting aspersions on Ben Sherratt. He's a good I'd say 4 or 5, but you know, and he can play both sides. So he would add something to a contending team. But first round pick, I mean, Okay, this is how ridiculous the chatter is out there. I think I can't remember who it was, whether it was Eck or Kevin who mentioned Hagel from Chicago.
Right.
And we looked at he's having a career year. I think he has like 17 goals. He's signed for another 2 years at $1.5 million. The talk out there is that Chicago wants a first round pick. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll tell you where Kyle Davidson can shove it. Because as much as I think Brandon Hagel's a pretty decent player, and he's having a really good year, and he's 26 years old, I'm not giving up a first round pick for that. No
Yeah.
way.
So Anthony's saying it's 5.1 a year for Ristolainen. And again, what I'll just say to like Esmir, he said that's why Hextall got the boot because Comcast didn't want a full rebuild. That's a part of it. They don't want a full rebuild. That's obvious.
Well, he got the boot because of that. In part, it was because he wasn't moving fast enough. Remember,
Correct.
He got fired just around the time that the Carter Hart should we call him up situation occurred.
Yes. All right, so let's fast forward now, Mike. So they got a guy who moved faster in some areas, and they're no better.
Right.
Right. So you can't say Hextall was wrong.
Now, I'm not saying it proved Hextall right. Now the thing is,
no, I'm not saying he's justified for all the non-communication stuff, all that other stuff. We didn't know what was going on. I'm not talking about that, but Mike is right. In the idea of how he wanted to do it, he may have been a little slow in plotting, but they sped it up and they didn't get any better results. So that's a fact.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so I think this will affect the market a little bit in the sense that now the thing is, I don't know how realistic people thought it was that Ristolainen was out there, because we had heard off and on that, yes, he's going to re-sign in Philadelphia. And then there was an offer that, last week it was like there was an offer that he turned down, that he was looking for over $6 million. And then that was described as erroneous, and that the Philly offer was under $5 million. And maybe it was like that was just the you say high, I say low, and we meet somewhere in the middle type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think I have always been a appreciator of Ristolainen's game, and I know that like I said, the analytics community.
You're not allowed to say he's a decent defenseman because the people of Buffalo online will just crush you, and that's fine. That's always going to be the case.
The analytics community in general, the people who are aficionados of analytics, cannot say that Ristolainen now is a good defenseman because it undercuts everything that they've said over the last 6 years. So, if you believe in the numbers and the numbers all of a sudden say he's good, and you're saying, well, the numbers are belying that, that fact, that he was bad before. Okay, well, then you're a hypocrite, because if you're purely interpreting things on the numbers, and his numbers are better, which I'm assuming they are this year, because his plus minus is good. His possession has been better. He's more physical. He's more, I think.
And it's not to say he doesn't have turnovers, of course, but any second pairing defenseman is going to have them. Does he have as many egregious turnovers as he had in Buffalo? No, he doesn't. Right. He's not.
So, I mean, right now, if you had to list now, this is the thing with the defensive market. You have I would say Klingberg is off the market right now. Dallas is in a playoff spot right now.
Yeah, I get that feeling that he might be.
Now, do you think that Dallas wants to lose him for nothing and doesn't want to maybe get a decent return for him at the deadline?
No, but here's the quandary. The quandary is, if they don't make the playoffs, Jim Mill's going to get fired. That's the quandary. So while you're saying that, if there's a chance of the playoffs, he's going to reel him back in, use him for the playoffs, double down, and make another trade to bolster his team, whether that's Justin Braun, whether he puts in a Giroux offer because they've been living in Philly. and whatever else they might be interested in, they're going to go for that because that's what the owner wants.
So Klingberg's off the market, likely. Ristolainen's now off the market because they've signed him.
Right.
That gives, I would say, 14.
Klingberg will be a draft trade for his rights. You know what I mean? Like that's what'll happen.
Yeah, but I mean, as you just said, Dallas is in a footing here where they're going to take a run at it because Radulov is in the last year of his contract. Klingberg's in the last year of his contract. You've got Ben and Sagan, still in their prime, but having gone through
the injuries they're past their prime a little bit.
Right, but I mean, Sagan's having a really good year, so
he is.
And this is almost the time where you're going to start to see a transition from, the group led by Sagan and Ben to Heiskanen, Rupe Hintz,
Jason Robertson. It's going to become
Robertson, right? But so you've got an older group there with Pavelski and the other core guys, and you've got the young guys coming up, and it may be in a year or two time for a reset and clearing some of those big salaries if they can. But right now they're in a situation where they can take a run at it. And really, you have to say that the West is not wide open because I think clearly Colorado and a couple other teams are at the top of the level, but there is a plausible path for Dallas to make a run. But what I was saying is, so Klingberg is probably off the market, and Ristolainen is definitely off the market. So this increases the leverage for Montreal with Sherratt, for Seattle with Giordano, for to a lesser extent, because I don't think
Chychrun supposedly has 8 teams after him.
Who, Chychrun?
Chychrun.
Yeah, but okay, let's talk about that for a second. It's like, do we really buy that Arizona is going to move Chychrun? I mean, if they get what they're looking for,
I buy it because I saw a quote from Doug Armstrong the other day. Hey, that basically said we're going to try and build a championship team through the draft. We all know you can't do it with just Bill Armstrong. Sorry, we know you can't do that just through the draft. But the fact that he made that statement tells me that he's not going to have a problem shaving Chychrun.
Now,
I don't know if he's not going to have a problem doing it. I think.
Well, he's just going to do it. Whatever, he's going to do it.
I think he's only going to do it if he gets a ridiculous price, and I think that's. I mean, and that's fine. I mean, that's like it's.
Blues have prospects that they can do a ridiculous price.
Yeah, I mean, if they get that, then yes, and then you really can't sit there and argue with it necessarily, because if he gets everything he's asking for, then that's a lot, and.
Well, the reason we're talking about this is because I don't know if you heard the Ristolainen news.
No,
that the Flyers signed him for a 5-year extension at $5.1 million. So Russ, I were just saying. So now Ristolainen's off the defensive market, and we think Klingberg is off the defensive market because Dallas is in a playoff spot right now. So that does give more leverage to the teams like Montreal with Sherratt and Seattle with Giordano and a couple other teams that have top 4 defense. Manson with Anaheim, maybe Lindholm. It gives them more leverage to get more in deals.
Yeah. Oh, it does. No question about it. This is interesting in many ways, because I think that what you're seeing here is it's a vote of confidence for Fletcher is all I can say. I honestly
it is. I mean, but did you really think he was getting fired after the season? I didn't.
I thought it was very possible. I mean, this is the worst Flyers team we've ever had.
Second worst.
So, I don't know.
The team after the lockout was the worst.
It's debatable because, I mean, this team is going to maybe finish with less points than them or around the same amount of points as them.
Yeah, and as I've been saying, there are excuses for this. I mean, when you have your best forwards out for the year or out for extended periods of time, that is, you lose Hayes, you lose Couturier,
They're going to go with the excuse factor on that one.
No, they're definitely going the excuse factor. They've already gone the excuse factor. I mean, and listen, that's fine. And it's like I thought what he did last summer was okay. It wasn't, and I thought at least it was going for it, which was something in Philadelphia. But I don't know. I think that this is. I'm not. You guys know I've been on here being not the greatest fan of Ristolainen. Although this contract is not that bad.
Well, we already had somebody in the chat was like, this is, I stomped on him because Ristolainen has been the whatever the opposite of darling is for the analytics community for years.
Yeah.
They hate his guts because they think he's terrible, and I think they're all clueless.
He's not terrible, Mike, but what he is, you can see. I mean, and I don't know anything.
He's not a number one defenseman, and that's
he's not a number two either. But he's not getting paid like a number one or two here,
right?
Nope, he's not.
So I mean, to pay him as a 3 or 4, that's okay. That's not, if he was $7 million per year, then I'd be in.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I just pointed out Sanheim's numbers, which are way better than last year, and instead of being a -22, he's a +2, and he's still on a bad team. So. Yeah. He's certainly capable of being a -22 on this team, but he is better, and he's better because of Ristolainen, like he is.
Yeah, no, and he's been hurt, and he's missed some time too. I mean, and it's hard to say. He's all part. I mean, I think that this will be good for his confidence because he's landing somewhere finally. I think he's been in flux for most of his career. It feels like, So I'm hoping that we see more of that, and you want to see
behind him here, so that helps too.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are. That depends at times, though. I don't know.
I mean, they haven't booed him once that I've seen this whole year.
No, I mean they haven't booed him because he hits. Like he hits, and in Philadelphia, if you hit, you're okay. But he's got more to his game than that, and that's the issue is how much hockey sense the guy has to me sometimes, and I don't know if that translates into analytics or what have you, but. I feel as if there are some plays he makes that just aren't smart, and sometimes overcomplicates his game. But that's not totally ridiculous for a young defenseman, right? So maybe there. I mean, he still has plenty of time to grow. Like he's still very young.
See, I think he pretty much is what he is. I mean, he's 27 going on 28. He's a fully formed NHL defenseman, and I think he's a pretty good one. Is he a top tier defenseman? No, and he's not being paid like that. He's, I think he's a really good 3.
Yeah,
and maybe an okay 2, but he's not a 1, and he's not being paid like 1. And then I said to Russ, it's like, okay, so now you have Provorov at 6'7", you have Ellis at 6'25", and Ristolainen at 5. I think they don't want to pay to over $20 million, and it's closer to 22 or 23 million on their top 4D, which I think might lend to the possibility of Sanheim getting moved during the off season. And maybe then, a guy like Cam York gets promoted up into the top 4 playing with an experienced defenseman. Because they're going to have to spend money to score goals and to improve offensively if they're actually going to do a reset. And you can't do that when you're spending much money on defense.
I mean, I think the whole defense kind of, Rush, you might disagree with this, but I'm not sure. But I really like your opinion on it. I think the whole defense crux of things is how quickly Cam York can play with Provorov. And
that's going to be a while. That's going
to be a while. That's going to be a while because I think they brought Ellis in to kind of mentor York,
right?
And they brought Ellis in to play with Provorov. Yeah, right. They brought him in to play with Provorov, but they also brought him in to mentor York because they're similar type players. Mm-hmm. And
I want to be clear. Ellis is a way better offensive player than York. Like they're not in the same ballpark.
Right. I mean,
that's going to be a good offensive player, but he's not of Ryan Ellis caliber.
Okay. I mean, I think he could be. I think interesting to say. I think numbers wise, he can match. He can match what Ellis has done. You don't think so?
No.
I mean,
that Ellis does. We can start there.
Yeah. I mean, but he'll get assists, and he's going to be, hopefully, knock on wood, healthier than Ellis has been, right? So that's like,
that's the hope.
That right now Ellis has done nothing for them. I mean, he's So the reality is, I think that is York ready to play? You know,
York will never have the double-digit goals, like 16. He might get 10.
Yeah.
And 41 points. It's going to be close. It's going to be close to what. So it'll be close, but I don't think he's quite at Ellis's caliber. Doesn't mean he won't get more points, but I don't think he's at his caliber.
Not maybe not like as an offensive power play threat. Like I agree with you on that.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, but as far as overall defenseman,
overall he could be better.
Probably better than Ellis, right? Like he can be better than Ellis. Like he's a better defensive.
Where Mike's jumping the gun is I'm not trading Sanheim in the offseason for two reasons. First one is I got to see if Ryan Ellis can limp into next season at all.
Exactly, I think that's
the biggest reason I can't trade him.
Yeah, I think the chances that he plays again are slim. I honestly do, and I don't. You know, it's a shame.
No, I think he'll play, but what will he play like? What will he be?
Yeah,
and can he stay healthy the rest of his career? Like they're going to answer those questions way before they decide on what they're going to do with Travis Sanheim.
Right. You're right. And Sanheim has been, you know, he's been consistently getting better all the time. And you know, I think for the most part, like
and I think a lot of it has to do with Ristolainen this year. I noticed early in the year, and now you could see like last 3-4 weeks, he's a completely different guy than he was last year at Sanheim.
Yes, and I think the biggest thing with Sanheim is in his career I've noticed is he's better when he is playing with a consistent partner. Like that is definitely the case with him. You know, when he and Myers were playing together all the time, they were a solid pair.
They were a solid pair. It's just that, and as it turns out now, you know, Myers probably was not going to be able to sustain it.
Yeah, and the Flyers kind of knew that when they moved him, and I think that was their instinct when they moved him, and that was probably right.
Yeah,
but he did make, you know, Sanheim was probably the one that was carrying that pairing, and now Sanheim and Ristolainen, that's a better if they keep them consistent, if they keep them as two players that play together all the time, that will help solidify the part of the defense, and that's what they have to do. So I mean, it does show, you know, they gave up a lot to get him. So I kept saying they're going to re-sign him because of what they gave up to get him, and because otherwise Fletcher would be screwed, and I didn't think they were going to get a first-round pick for him.
Oh, see, that's where I disagree. I think they would have gotten a first.
Oh, they would have.
I don't know. I'd like to think that, but the more and more people I talk to, the less and less first-round picks it feels like they're going to be given out. Like we're going to see.
Well, I'll say this. I think this deal is more about Ristolainen liking Philadelphia, feeling comfortable here, and him getting enough money closer to what he was making last year that he said, okay, I know I'm going to make more money out on the market, but it may not be in a situation that I'm comfortable with or more comfortable with. So I'll sign this deal. I think if they would have recouped the first round pick in a deal. Maybe they wouldn't have gotten a player like Hag as well, but I think they would have got a first round pick, no doubt, in a Ristolainen deal.
I mean, look, in the end, it was still an overpayment because you just mentioned why. But getting past that, at least they re-signed him, so the overpayment is more palatable a season later. Yeah. I know fans are going to be mad because they want this rebuild, but we also know Comcast isn't doing a rebuild. So that doesn't matter what you want.
And signing Ristolainen is not anti-rebuild. It's like that's not.
It kind of is.
Yes, it is.
I don't think so. He's not that old. I mean, he's not.
No, it's not the age factor, Eck. It's the adding more money to a cap that's already still in trouble.
It's the mentality being displayed by the organization. The Philadelphia Flyers of the Toronto Maple Leafs of about 10 or 11 years ago. They refuse to rebuild when they need to rebuild.
Well, you're saying they're not tanking, is what you're saying.
No. I mean, when people were mad when the Leaf, and I'm going even further back, going back to like 2008, 2009, when we were doing Hockey Buzz, podcasts on Talk Show, they were pissed off that the team sucked. The team was not a playoff team, and they refused to get worse in the short term to be able to go out and get Stamkos or to get Tavares. And Philadelphia, okay, they're interested in a quick turnaround. I don't know whether they can make the moves that can make a quick turnaround, but they're going to sure try. And if they fail, then all they're going to do is exacerbate the situation, and it's going to take longer to rebuild it once you keep adding more stuff to it.
But I don't think they're. I don't think they. I personally don't think they're in need of a rebuild. And I also and I think I guess when you look at some of your key players like Farabee, Konechny, Morgan Frost, some of the guys that still haven't come up yet, from the USA program, like York and who's the other kid? I can't remember his name, but that hasn't come up at all. That is really really won like real powder, like a real.
You mean Zamula?
The fire plug, one of the Team USA fire plugs with York a couple of years back in the juniors tournament. I'm trying to remember that. Anyway, they
Sano
yeah.
Lisinski?
No, shoot,
Forster?
No, but he's also a factor, I think.
He is, but he's recovering from shoulder surgery, so you
Right,
can't expect him
recovering from shoulder surgery. No, I'm thinking of
here's what I'm looking at.
Like Berard. No, that's not it. Bernard.
No, there's a Brett Berard on the Rangers. He was good in the World Juniors.
I'll figure it out. But I'm just saying, I think that the Flyers have a young. I think they're players that are in Ristolainen's age group. They have enough players like that. If they were simply players like Giroux, that would be a different situation. But they're not. That's not really what they are. Couturier is still not that old. He's the oldest of the rebuild type thing. But he's not that old still. So
Bobby
Brink, 73 million.
I know the cap's a mess. There's no two ways about that. I mean,
Kevin Hayes. How much of a mess? Hold on. So 73 million, and they probably need a couple of forwards, and two or three defensemen, and they're going to have a kid or two come up. So that's $8 million for all that.
Were you talking about Bobby Brink?
There you go. Thank you.
Oh, he wasn't. Okay. All right, Bobby Brink. He's nowhere near ready.
Well, now you're ready, but he will be in the NHL, I think.
Yeah, I do too. But I think we're talking 2 years from now.
2 years from now, that's fine. And I think that, but I think when you're looking at this, those are still players that are further ahead than guys you're going to get in the next draft. Like the reality is like, so the rebuild to me is like what Arizona's doing, which is like, we don't have anybody that matters. We're going for the draft, and then we'll be really good in a couple of years. Players have a good couple lines that are good.
Here's my checklist. So you lose Giroux, right? Broussard's not coming back. You need a couple centers. There's nobody at the center position that's coming up from the minors that's going to fill a top six. Now maybe you're gonna throw Lawton in there, and maybe Lisinski does the fourth line, but you're still gonna need to get another center. Frost if he's ready. You're still going to need to get. But I don't think they'll put Frost in top six anyhow because they've been reluctant to do it. So you're going to need another center, at least one. You're going to need at least two defensemen. Maybe York does come up for the year, but you're still going to need two other defensemen. That's still three free agents to spend $8 million. Now you might be able to bury JVR somewhere, but then that's going to hurt you in whatever rebuild you're talking about because you're giving up at least more picks to do it.
Yeah. Wouldn't you say their top six centers are Couturier and Hayes when everybody's healthy?
Right. But again, is Hayes healthy? He doesn't look healthy to me on the ice right now.
You have to assume at the beginning of next year that he'll be healthy. If he's not, then you have to address it. But I'm saying Couturier and Hayes would be your 1-2. Maybe Lawton, maybe Frost would be your 3. You can find a fourth line center out there. In terms of organizational depth, maybe I think you're right. I think more than anything, they're going to need offense on the wings. They have Farabee, they have Atkinson, they have Konechny.
I'll tell you this, in my mind, I don't know if Kevin Hayes is a second line center anymore, based on what he's been through. He's not showing me right now. The Kevin Hayes I see on the ice does not look like a second line center. Is that fair?
He doesn't. He doesn't. But
that's the evaluation that Fletcher has to make during the offseason.
And that the big issue they have salary cap wise is that Hayes is not filling into his spot like where he should be. And that's. But I think there's no question that they're going to give Morgan Frost a chance to be the second line center. Now, whether or not he's ready for that or not is a big question. But I do think that
giving a chance, giving a chance, having him make out of camp. And say, listen, Morgan, you've got like 25 games here. Prove it to us. Are they going to give him the usual 8 or 9?
No, I think that the fact that they are retooling will enable them to say, okay, Frost, you get a chance, you get a significant shot here to do it because they do think I don't know that he's a 2 or a 3. Like, I'm not sure what Frost is yet, but I think
No,
that,
that's fair. That's fair to say.
but I also think in Lawton you have another guy who I don't know if he's a 2 or a 3. So I think that in those two players there, you have two young players that can both be like a 2, 2A, 3, whatever.
Okay. Well,
So
how about
kinda
this?
gives you
The other thing is they're doing all these roster moves. You don't know who the coach is going to be.
And that is the biggest part of this. I mean, and
you're
that's
not going to have a lot to change, a lot of
Right.
flexibility to change if a coach comes in there. Like, as an example, we've seen a guy like Torts come in there. A guy just gets signed, and that guy's useless under the Torts system. I'm not saying Torts is the next Flyers coach, but that can happen with any coach.
Well, I would assume, and maybe I'm giving him too much credit, that based on the fact that this season's a disaster, and you have to pivot during the offseason, that the first move that they make maybe a week, 10 days after the end of the regular season, because they're not going to make the play. While everybody else is in the first round, they're announcing their new coach.
I agree.
And if they're not, then they're dropping the ball, because Russ, they need to react to what that new coach, what his tendencies are. And if it's Tortorella, then you need to have that guy in place and then make the moves that make that team more Tortorella-like. And if you don't do that, then you're really handicapping. That's like bringing in Mike Babcock and you have a bunch of offensive, creative guys when he wants to play shutdown hockey.
But the Flyers aren't like one specific kind of team that they're so much like one direction or another that any coach shouldn't be able to roll with it. Kind of. I think that
it's a risky thing, Eck. I mean, again, all you have to do is look at the Rangers with Gallant coming in and the troubles he had with Lafreniere, and then like if you just listen to the fans and say, "Hey, just put him with their top players," all of a sudden he's doing something. But it took 3/4 of a season to do that. Capo Caco is no better. They may have to get rid of him simply because they can get assets for him now. Where in another year, if he has trouble, what are you going to get for him? Like
you'll have players like that here. Like in Konechny could be that guy here. There's certain players that could be that guy here. But at the same time, I think that these aren't like offensive players to anybody. Like you're not talking about like say they bring in a Tocchet. Say they go that direction and say they get Tocchet to come here, which I still think is a strong possibility.
Sure, I think he's still probably the top candidate.
Yeah. And I think that Tocchet is doing a good job on television, and I think that actually he's gaining some value as a coach by what he's doing on TV, which is interesting. Because
so as an example, Konechny, right?
Yeah,
he might drive Tocchet crazy because he's still not doing what Travis Konechny is supposed to be doing on the ice every game. He's not.
Right. Or he might drive Tocchet crazy. He might drive Tocchet crazy, or Tocchet could. There's no player I think that could be a better mentor than Tocchet for Konechny. I think that's a great.
Okay, but while he's helping that one, somebody else may get worse. This is the way coaching is. It's never going to be a perfect fit for everybody, and you don't know which guy under contract now is going to be the odd man out, and that's the part.
I feel that's very true, and obviously that's correct. But the reality is, I think when I look at this team, I think they're more similar to Vancouver than they are like Ottawa. I think they're more like. Vancouver, where they come in and they make a coaching change, and that coach brings a new energy. I could see that happening in Philly.
The only difference is, and I do want to stress this, they don't have the skill level that Vancouver has. Right. They don't have a Quinn Hughes type on the blue line. They don't have anybody like that. They don't have anybody like Pettersson or Besser either.
Right, just to get off the Flyers.
They have different type players, and some of them are very good. Sorry, Mike, like Farabee, but I'm just saying they have
more depth than Vancouver in some ways, but I agree with you.
Just to get off the Flyers page here, because Russ, if we needed any idea of who's going to be the goaltender at the Heritage Classic, the news that just broke a few minutes ago will tell us Jack Campbell is out a minimum of 2 weeks with a rib injury, so we're going to see Peter Mrazek in goal.
It's going to be great. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. The professor of Schadenfreude, Russ Cohen.
Mrazek in an outdoor game. What could go wrong?
Oh, gee, yeah. But
I will go on record right now to tell you that he will be the first star of that game. Right now.
For the Sabres.
No. The first star of the game. Try me, please. Just mark my words. because Mrazek is a big game spotlight type goalie. Like he has always been, like when you put him into a situation, like that he's not supposed to succeed in, that's where he's at his best. And it always has been that way with him. It's very strange, but that is his game. Like a couple times in Philly, even when he came in, he would steal a game that when the Flyers were playing terrible and he was playing terrible and you thought everything was going to be awful. I mean, I think that this is the kind of situation that Mrazek will thrive in.
Well, he's gonna get a lot of work the next couple of weeks. They've called up Eric Shalgren, who now I'm just looking at the Leafs schedule here over the next couple of weeks. They play Arizona tonight, Buffalo. They don't have back-to-backs. There's actually some time in between games, but their schedule is not easy. So, losing Campbell for an extended period of time leading up to the deadline. Dubas has said he's not going for a goaltender, but maybe the injury makes them look for, because Eric Shalgren has not played in the NHL. I don't believe he was a part of the Arizona organization. He's having a decent year down in the AHL, but that they have to start worrying about, contingency plans, and Michael Hutchinson is not a contingency anymore in terms of the goaltending. So that maybe you see them go after a Craig Anderson or some veteran guy who's on a minimum deal as a fallback.
It would be smart for them to do that.
Yes.
And just because, when you're a cup contender like that, you have injury issues and then, and stability issues like you have with Mrazek, I would say you want to have a third guy around. Just, I think that's something. It's not going to cost you much. You're going to make it happen. I think you need to make it happen. You need to have an experienced guy. Like Anderson would be the perfect fit for them in a lot of ways. There aren't that many other guys like that I can think of that are out there. Halak maybe, but
no, he's not going to.
I don't think he's going to get traded either. So
he's got no trade protection.
Yeah,
I think he signed there because he wanted to play in Vancouver. And Vancouver.
All right, so just so you know, this is working in your favor. The Red Wings beat the Avalanche in the Stadium Series back in 2016, 2017, I think it was. And he only gave up 3 goals. They won the game 5-3, but his save percentage was an .889.
Okay.
So you're treading it on that. He did get a win, so he's got that.
There is a part of him that wants so much to be Bobrovsky at his best, and but it just doesn't quite reach it. And it's just like, but there are times when he will amaze you with something he does, and just to the point where you're like, holy cow, that guy is like, he kind of reminds me of like a Niittymaki type goalie. I mean, who's also the same way. No, more like Niittymaki, who wins for Finland, wins the gold medal or whatever, and he's just a completely, but shocks everybody by doing that. But having an unbelievable, they have this ability to rise. Finnish goalies have the ability to do this, and I just feel like I would like to go back and watch that game, Russ, because I know his save percentage was that, but I bet you there were 1 or 2 saves at key times that just turned that game around. I don't know, I don't remember that game at all, but I just think that's the thing.
Maybe, but he's got a little more pressure on him now being a Maple Leaf.
Yeah, but he's also playing against the Sabres. I mean, so I think that at the end of the day.
Yeah, but it's outdoors. Outdoors, anything can happen.
No, and it's the Sabres. How many times?
Mike always talks about the Sabres.
Yeah, that's true. But
this is the Sabres Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, I know.
Do we have any rumors, Zach?
Not really, not yet. Unfortunately, it being so early and me coming from a doctor's appointment right now with my son early this morning, I have not. I didn't even know about the risk line and trade, so I have to get out there and do some digging before I get my blog up in about 2 hours' time. So definitely check back. I will have something at that point. Did you guys talk about this Varlamov thing that you mentioned?
Yeah, no, we did. And let me just I'll preface it by saying this. I watched a lot of the game last night between Washington and Edmonton. I don't care what anybody says. Edmonton is not making the playoffs unless they had a goaltender. Koskinen, he wasn't responsible for the goal with 8.8 seconds left.
No, that was a baloney call.
Yeah,
that was
what? You mean the hook on Ovechkin?
No, the Oshie. I guess there was a. I guess it was a hook on Ovechkin. That was whatever it was that gave him the power play. Right, they got a power play on that.
Well, no, they didn't get up. Ovechkin hooked Hyman while Hyman was trying to score into the empty net. They didn't call anything.
That's right. That's what it was.
And then they come back down
And get the goal.
with
Yeah,
less
that's
than
a
2 seconds. Yeah.
That
So I
should have
mean,
been called. Yes.
well, and that's the typical
But it's
start.
Ovechkin, it doesn't get called. Well, you have to mention it.
But
Right.
yeah, but here's the thing about that. Okay, so he also stones Ovechkin on a breakaway. Did you see that? You
Well,
saw that, right?
the best save of the night though was Samsonov on, I think it was Draisaitl.
Yeah, it
in
was.
the third period that kept the game close. And then but okay, Washington was behind the 8 ball for most of that game. Comes back, ties it with 8.8 seconds left to go in the third period, and then they had a couple chances in overtime, but then we got Draisaitl and McDavid on a 2-on-1, and
It saves in overtime too, though. I mean, it's just like I'm not saying Koskinen is the answer, but I thought last night he was definitely pretty good. Like I thought that was.
They got to win. I mean, Mike's acting like they lost.
Yeah, and against a team that Caps were coming off like 3 wins.
I mean, you are. If I didn't say a score based on what you said,
I know, exactly. I mean, people are checking NHL.com right now.
They blew a lead with a second.
Again, like Russ said, that was not fair, and then they just
circumstances led to that, Mike.
And Washington's a good team. Washington almost won in overtime. I mean, but let's talk about the Varlamov thing, okay? That you guys texted me last night. Where is this coming from, by the way? Who wrote about this?
Friedman, I believe, reported that Varlamov denied going to Edmonton. He didn't want to.
So he nixes a trade to the Edmonton Oilers, which is interesting, right? On a lot of levels. More so to me, the interesting thing is that Edmonton could have even made that happen, because he's a big contract. Like he's got a lot of money, right? So we're also
they've eaten half of it, and who knows what else they would have done to make it happen.
So something else. So this tells you that Edmonton's willing to do some creative things to get a goalie in.
Tyson Berry was just put on IR, and I don't know if it was LTIR, but and I believe Nugent Hopkins is out long term.
Okay,
so
that might be.
Yeah, that might be I'm just looking at their
lucky with injuries, like we talked about yesterday.
Right now they have almost almost $8 million, over $8 million on LTIR. So they still don't have enough space, but they're
making this league. Anyway,
but both Nugent Hopkins, Barry, and Puljujarvi are on injured reserve. So maybe they would move one of those guys to LTIR to make a room for a goaltender, but no goalie in their right mind is going to that cluster.
I don't know about that.
It's a disaster.
It's a disaster with potential.
They may have to circle back for Martin Jones, Zach. Like that's
the Martin Jones. I just don't see him going anywhere. I know you think he could, but I don't see it at all.
It depends what they think of Smith. Smith hasn't had a good start in a long time. Clearly, they're okay with Koskinen to a degree, but I think if you're going into the playoffs and they make the playoffs, you know that if Koskinen comes out, your chances of winning the playoffs now have decreased greatly. Where at least with Jones, you don't know. You don't know for sure because it's a new team, and there's a little bit of an unknown factor when the other team faces them. The other team faces Mike Smith. They're not worried about anything.
He is the worst possible goalie for that team, Mike.
No, but we don't know that. I mean,
no, honestly, I do because of his style. The style he plays, like the best situation for him has always been teams that play pretty well defensively in front of him. He's half decent positionally. He's good at letting the puck hit him, but he's not good side to side. He's not good quick and tight.
Who are we talking about?
Jones. Well, how about this factor, Eck? I'm going to give you another mental factor here.
Yeah.
If Koskinen doesn't have Smith to worry about behind him, will he play better because he won't fear Martin Jones?
That's maybe something, but any team that would go with Martin Jones,
he's getting tired of looking over his shoulder at Mike Smith too.
Maybe I don't know, but
I heard the exact opposite, Russ. I heard that Koskinen does not do well when he's the guy. That he wants to be part of a tandem, and when he's part of a tandem, then the pressure is off him a little bit.
Yeah, but I know that's what you heard. But when the players were talking recently, and he was on his undefeated win streak, nobody was talking about Koskinen not liking to be the number one guy, and he was pulling the numbers, and he's still pulling the numbers lately for them. Like he's been much better.
I agree. It is true. I will say that Mrazek is a better goalie when there's no one behind him. I agree with that.
I understand that.
I think that's something you'll see that you could see briefly.
Well,
here.
I mean, I'll tell you this, Zach, right now, with where Jack Campbell has been the last 2.5 months since December the 1st. If you're talking about Mrazek taking the bit and running with it, then he'd be the number one, because Campbell really has not, they tried to, okay, we'll bring Mrazek back and we'll sort of go 1A, 1B,
but the reason they're not going to do that, Mike, is that the natural instability of the Toronto Maple Leafs situation, going with the total natural instability of Peter Mrazek as a person / goalie is insanity. I mean, Campbell might not be good, but Campbell at least is what he is.
I'm only saying if he takes the bit and runs with it. If he
takes the bit and runs here, you think he could win the job? I don't.
Yes, I think he could win if he plays. If he's the number one, and he's the number one for the next at least the next 2 weeks, and he goes on a hot streak where he starts, just like 950 save percentage and winning every game, he's the goalie. Because
all right, let me ask you this, Mike. Honest question. Let's say Mrazek wins the job, game 1 of the playoffs. Can we mic up the room that you're watching this game in to see how behind Mrazek you really are when he gives up the first goal? Can we put a live mic on you?
Okay, is this an NC-17 rated?
Yeah, right. I mean, he might again. Mrazek could come in there and he could win the Conn Smythe. I mean, he's so ridiculous that his consistency.
I just want to see a world where Mrazek's starting game 1 of the playoffs, and Mike is like, I really like Mrazek. I think he could take the Leafs a long way. I want to see
Russ, you know how skeptical I am. But I'm a results-oriented guy. If he's playing well, and Campbell really has gone up and down the last couple months, they're gonna give him an opportunity. But
I just want 2022 Michael Jello to talk to like 2017 Michael Jello about Mrazek and see what you come up with.
No, I mean,
I know one thing about both 2017 Mike Jello and 2022 Mike Jello. They're both extremely handsome and intelligent.
Yeah, they're both aggravated. Yeah, and I get it. And I bet you anything though, Matthews, Marner, Tavares are in Campbell's corner.
Oh, of course they are.
The reality is that if Mrazek is your guy and things go sour, they go sour big.
Right, but
and you don't want that to go sour. You don't want to go sour big in Toronto.
You're saying everything right, but I mean, what I'm saying is, if Mrazek comes in this situation, in the lurch, here with Campbell out, like Campbell came in for Anderson last year, and Mrazek plays really great,
and he's done that before,
right? And that's what I'm saying.
But every time he's won the job,
if he does that, then he's going to be given the job.
But you just shouldn't want that to happen, because bad things happen. Because
it's a reality. I don't know whether
the history will tell you that the reason Peter Mrazek has bounced around so much is because when he does get given the number one job, he is a problem. Mm-hmm. And but short term, one game, a game here, a weird situation there, yeah, go with him. Like he's now maybe he's mature. Maybe he's like, okay, I'm okay. But maybe. I mean, he's been through enough teams have told him what he's about that you would think that he would mature, at some point.
I do have the run. I do want to mention. I did put out a draft list 2.0 on sportsology.com, so that's my second one. Eventually, I'll have one of 45, so we'll start talking about it on the show. But
yeah, definitely, absolutely. Go to sportsology.com to check that out. Remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Enjoy the games tonight. Look for my blog in the next hour or so, and more rumor chart updates then. Thanks.